I always imagined that if my marriage ever fell apart, the moment would be dramatic, shouting, accusations, maybe even something getting thrown. Instead, the beginning of the end arrived on a quiet Sunday morning, wrapped in a voice so calm it felt rehearsed. Samantha sat across from me at the kitchen table, fingers curled around a mug she hadn't taken a sip from. The sunlight through the blinds made thin stripes across her face, but nothing softened the tension sitting in her eyes. I felt it even before she opened her mouth. Some heavy truth was coming. Then she exhaled and said the words that left a crack inside me. I think we should take a break. A break. It echoed in my head like a bad punchline to a joke I didn't understand. I stared at her, waiting for context. That's when she delivered the final blow, soft but brutal. My ex, Tyler, he needs support. He's going through something serious. Tyler. A name I hadn't heard in years. A name she used to avoid even mentioning. Now suddenly he required her attention more than I did. She kept talking, her voice gentle, too gentle. He reached out yesterday. He's in a really dark place. I can't just ignore him, Jason. You know I care deeply about people. But the tone was wrong, detached, too measured. She'd practiced this speech, probably more than once. I leaned back, trying to absorb what I was hearing. And what about us? Where do we fit in this crisis? Samantha blinked like my question had startled her, though I doubted it truly had. This is temporary, she said quickly. I just need space to think. Clarity. Space. Clarity. Words that sound clean but carry the smell of something already spoiled. I didn't yell, didn't plead. A cold, almost analytical calm settled in me, and for the first time I noticed how stiff her posture was, how tightly she held her mug, how her eyes kept drifting toward the hallway. I followed her gaze with mine, and that's when I saw it. Her overnight bag, zipped, packed, waiting by the door like an obedient dog. She hadn't told me she was leaving, but the bag had. My chest tightened, a slow burn spreading under my ribs. You packed before talking to me? I asked. Samantha swallowed. I wasn't sure how the conversation would go, she said, so I prepared. Prepared. A neat word for a dirty truth. She'd decided long before she sat down at the table with me. She stood and walked toward me, her voice softening into something dangerously close to seductive. Please understand, Jason. He doesn't have anyone else right now. I just need to be there for a few days. She rested her fingers lightly on my wrist, the same touch she used to give before sliding closer in bed. My body remembered her warmth. It irritated me how easily the memory surfaced, her leaning against me before sleep, her hand on my chest, the way she kissed when she wanted more than just closeness. But now her touch didn't ignite desire. It felt like someone pressing a bruise. I pulled my arm back gently but decisively. Samantha's expression flickered, just for a second, like she hadn't expected resistance. She stepped back, adjusting the strap of her bag, her breath brushing my collarbone as she moved past me, too intimate for someone asking to leave. This isn't the end, she murmured. I promise. I just need to help him. Once he's stable, everything will go back to normal. Normal. Whatever that meant now. I watched in silence as she reached for the doorknob. Part of me expected her to look back, to hesitate, to reconsider. She didn't. The door clicked shut behind her, and the house fell into a silence so thick it felt alive. That was the moment I knew. She wasn't taking a break. She was stepping into something she'd already chosen, and I was suddenly standing alone at the start of a story I never saw coming. When Samantha left that day, I told myself it was temporary, a few days, maybe a week. Enough time for her to support Tyler through whatever mysterious crisis had suddenly swallowed him whole. But by the third day, something shifted. She came back home briefly to grab more clothes. I heard her before I saw her, laughing softly into her phone, the kind of laugh she used to reserve only for me. When she walked in, she looked different, brighter, energized, like someone who'd stumbled onto some secret source of adrenaline, and she didn't even try to hide it. "Hey, Jason," she said, brushing past me with a smile that didn't match the seriousness of our break. The kind of smile a woman gives when something, or someone, has lit her up inside. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She nodded, barely listening. "Yeah, it's just been intense. He's going through a lot." But her glow told a different story. She moved through the house like she was floating, humming under her breath as she opened drawers and tossed clothes into another bag. I watched her from the hallway, trying to understand what exactly about helping her ex had turned her into this almost radiant version of herself. It didn't take long for the inconsistencies to appear. Her phone never left her hand. She texted nonstop, thumbs flying. Whenever I stepped too close, she angled the screen away, a subtle shift but sharp enough to cut. She even turned off message previews, something she'd never cared about before. One night she came back around midnight to pick up her laptop. She smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, something stronger, muskier. My stomach tightened, but I said nothing. She brushed her hair behind her ear, avoiding my eyes as she slipped past me with a quick, "Long day. I'm exhausted. Long day." But she looked energized, cheeks flushed, lips slightly pink like she'd been chewing them nervously, or kissing someone. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but she didn't look like a woman helping someone in crisis. She looked like a woman rediscovering excitement, rediscovering herself, or rediscovering an old connection she never fully let die. By the end of the week, she barely came home at all. She left early, returned late. Sometimes she didn't return until the next morning, offering excuses that felt like hastily assembled scripts. He had a breakdown. He needed someone there. I couldn't just leave him like that. But her eyes held that same brightness, that same spark. This wasn't a burden. This was fuel. I started watching more closely. Her clothes changed. Tighter jeans, tops she used to wear only when we went out together. She wore perfume again, the one she claimed was too much for everyday use. Her hair started getting styled differently, slightly curled at the ends, like she suddenly cared about looking good for someone. And she was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. One evening, she walked in wearing a skirt I hadn't seen in months. Her legs looked incredible in it, and she knew it. She didn't even try to hide the way she smoothed the fabric down, almost self-conscious, but in a proud, flirtatious way. "New look?" I asked lightly. She froze for a split second, then shrugged. "Just felt like dressing up." "For Tyler?" Slipped out before I could stop myself. Samantha's eyes narrowed, her shoulders tensing. "Don't start." "I'm not starting," I said quietly. "I'm just asking." "Well, don't." She grabbed her purse with a sharpness that didn't match her calm facade. "I'm not doing anything wrong." That was always her line. When someone needs to defend innocence before you've accused them, they're not innocent. After she left again, I sat on the edge of the couch with a hollow feeling in my chest. Everything about her behavior screamed more than support. It screamed intimacy, familiarity, a revived spark she was too alive, too excited to hide. It was like watching someone slip into a secret second life. So I did what anyone with a sinking gut does. I started paying attention to details, screenshots of bank alerts, changes in her location sharing, a new contact in her phone saved under a suspiciously bland name, M. Her smiles, her late nights, her sudden transformation into a version of herself she never brought home anymore. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining anything. Something was happening. And deep down, I felt the truth press against me like a cold hand. Samantha didn't take a break to help her ex. She took a break to return to something she'd already reignited. I just didn't know how far it had gone. Yet. The truth didn't hit me all at once. It leaked in, slowly, quietly, like a drip under the sink you don't notice until the cabinet's already warped. And the first real crack came from someone who wasn't even trying to expose anything. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I'd gone out for coffee with Megan, a mutual friend we'd known since college. She'd texted me out of the blue. "Hey, everything okay with you guys?" The kind of message you get when someone senses something before you admit it. We sat outside the cafe, and I tried to keep things casual. "Yeah, we're fine. Just some stress. You know how it is." Megan gave me a sympathetic look, stirring her iced drink. "Sam's been different lately." "Different how?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. She hesitated, biting her lip. "I don't know if I should say anything." That sentence alone made my pulse spike. People only hesitate when the truth is ugly. "You can say it," I told her, keeping my voice steady. "I'd rather know." Megan exhaled and leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Well, she's been reconnecting with Tyler for months. I thought you knew." "Months. Not days. Not weeks. Months." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression still. Too still. "How do you know that?" I asked. "She mentioned it back in the summer. Said he reached out. They got coffee a few times. I assumed you knew because she didn't make it sound secret." Coffee. Back in the summer. While she was telling me she was burnt out, stressed, not feeling like herself. And I didn't know, because Samantha had edited the truth the same way she edited her photos, subtle enough to pass, polished enough to hide the flaws. Megan's face softened. "Jason, is something going on?" I forced a smile, just figuring things out. But something cold had settled in my chest, the kind of cold that makes everything clear. When I got home, I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the house like it belonged to someone else. Her car wasn't there again. Another crisis, probably. Another night spent helping. Inside, the house smelled faintly of her perfume, the citrus floral one she used to wear when she wanted attention. It lingered in the hallway, in the bedroom doorway, as if to remind me she'd been here long enough to leave a trace, but not long enough to stay. I walked into the kitchen, opened my laptop, and started pulling together fragments of inconsistencies. I wasn't trying to catch her. I was trying to understand the full picture. There were texts she'd deleted, threads with gaps. There were charges on the credit card from places she never mentioned. There were nights she came home flushed, smiling like someone who'd just been told something intimate. I wasn't imagining anything, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something in me had shifted. The desperation, the confusion. It was cooling into a calculated calm. I needed to know the whole truth before reacting, and that meant watching, not interfering. 2 days later, the universe handed me another piece. I was at the grocery store picking up a few things when I ran into one of Samantha's co-workers, Alana. She greeted me warmly but with a hint of awkwardness. "Hey, Jason. Haven't seen you in a while." "Yeah," I replied. "Sam's been busy." Her smile faded a little. "Is everything okay between you two?" That question again. God, how many people had noticed something before I did? "We're taking some space," I said carefully. Alana nodded slowly, then, almost without meaning to, said something that made my entire body go still. She mentioned Tyler's been a big presence lately. I figured that must have been weird for you two. A big presence. Not a crisis. Not a one-time emergency. A presence. I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. The truth was forming a shape too large to ignore. That night, when Samantha finally came home, I watched her move around the living room with an ease that felt practiced. She tossed her bag onto the couch, humming to herself again. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, her lips soft and pink like she'd been biting them. "Long day?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "Yeah. Tyler had a rough moment. I stayed with him." Her voice was too light, too warm, the kind of tone a woman uses when talking about someone she's grown close to in ways she doesn't want to name. I studied her expression, her posture, the tiny flickers she didn't realize she was revealing. She wasn't burdened. She wasn't drained. She was alive. That's when I realized something important. People don't lie to protect others. They lie to protect themselves. And Samantha wasn't protecting me from the truth. She was protecting her new world from my presence. So I stayed quiet, calm, collected. And while she slipped deeper into whatever she had with Tyler, I began preparing for the moment she didn't expect. The moment I'd stop being her safety net and start being her reckoning. I used to believe Samantha was the kind of woman who could lie cleanly, smoothly, without snagging on her own words. But the thing about lies is simple. The bigger they get, the more pieces they need. And eventually, those pieces don't fit. Her cracks started showing in the smallest moments. It began with her slipping up on a Tuesday night. She came home late, past midnight, with that same faint cologne clinging to her clothes. She tossed her purse onto the counter, rubbing her temples dramatically like she'd survived some heroic mission. "Rough night?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "You have no idea," she sighed. "Ty..." She froze. The letter hung between us like a pulled thread. "Tyler?" I finished for her. She blinked, caught completely off guard. "No. I was going to say Tina. She needed help with something." Tina. A woman Samantha hadn't mentioned in months. I could have called her out. I didn't, because watching her scramble was more revealing than anything she could say. The next day she was even worse. She walked into the house, dropped her keys, and muttered, "God, he's exhausting." Then her eyes widened, and she corrected herself. "I mean, today was exhausting. Work stuff." Her face flushed, a quick burst of panic she tried to disguise with a smile. Once, she could talk for 20 minutes without switching expressions. Now her face betrayed her every other sentence, and the guilt, whether she admitted it or not, followed her like a shadow. One evening, I decided to test something. I asked, "Did you eat yet?" Her answer came too fast. "Yeah, earlier at home." "At home?" Funny. I'd been here the entire evening and she hadn't. Still, I nodded. "What did you have?" She blinked, searching for a memory that didn't exist. Pasta." "We don't have pasta," I said casually. Her silence was deafening. She fumbled for her phone, pretending to check something. "Oh, I meant Tyler's place. He made pasta. I forgot where I ate. Today's been a blur." A blur. But the tomato stain on her sleeve told a different story. Someone cooked for her. Someone cooked with her. She used to only get that stain when she leaned too close to the pan, laughing, buzzing around the kitchen, playful, warm, the way she used to be with me. Now, she was giving that warmth to someone else. What struck me most wasn't the lies themselves. It was how badly she delivered them. Samantha wasn't thinking straight. She was distracted, constantly checking her phone, smiling at messages she deleted seconds later. Once, she was so flustered she accidentally called me Jay, a nickname only Tyler ever used. When I raised an eyebrow, she snapped, "It's just a slip. Don't make it weird." But she was the one becoming weird, jumping at noises, smoothing her clothes obsessively, biting her lip until it turned red, as if trying to hide the nervous excitement inside her. And the more nervous she got, the more angry she became. Not at Tyler, at me, because I wasn't reacting the way she expected. She wanted me confused, emotional, begging for answers, fighting for her attention, breaking under the weight of losing her. But I didn't give her the satisfaction. I stayed calm, too calm, and it rattled her. One night she burst into the living room after getting a text, snatching her phone as if I might lunge for it. "Don't look at my messages," she snapped. "I didn't," I said quietly. "You were standing too close." "I was across the room." She stared at me, chest rising and falling, struggling to hold her composure. She wasn't protecting her privacy, she was protecting her secret. Then, in a tone dripping with defensiveness, she added, "I don't owe you explanations during a break." Funny how she remembered we were on a break, only when it helped her justify something. She stormed off to the bedroom. I waited 5 minutes, then walked past the doorway. The door was open just enough for me to see her sitting on the edge of the bed, head in her hands, breathing fast. For a second, she looked like someone who regretted everything. But then her phone buzzed. She saw the name flash on the screen. Her entire face brightened. Tyler. And just like that, her guilt disappeared, replaced with excitement she couldn't hide even if she tried. The final crack came with a smell. She came home after helping him through another tough night. But she wasn't drained. She was glowing, flushed, breathy. And when she bent down to take off her shoes, I caught it. That musky cologne again, mixed with something else. Her perfume, his cologne, heat between bodies. "Everything okay?" I asked. She froze. "Yeah. Why? You look different." Her lips parted slightly, almost a guilty reflex, before she forced a smile. "Just tired." She wasn't tired. She was satisfied. And for the first time, she knew I knew. Not because I accused her, not because I raised my voice, but because I stopped asking questions. And that terrified her more than confrontation ever could. Because when a man stops asking, it means he's already planning something else. There's a moment in every disaster where you stop trying to fix anything and simply start watching. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand the truth. Some things aren't broken. Some things were already gone. That realization hit me late one night as Samantha paced around the kitchen, pretending to argue with a coworker on the phone while whispering into the receiver like she was afraid the walls might listen. She turned away from me, covering her mouth, smiling at something I wasn't supposed to hear. I didn't listen. I didn't ask. I just stood there, arms crossed, silent. And that's when I saw it. The first real flicker of fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. Because for the first time since her break began, I looked unaffected, detached. She expected emotional chaos from me. She wanted confused questions, jealousy, arguments. She wanted me to cling to her, to fight for her, to give her the validation Tyler didn't. Instead, I became calm, steady, unshakable, and she didn't know what to do with that. I began taking back my life quietly, piece by piece. I joined a gym the next morning, not out of revenge, not because I wanted her to notice, but because focusing on my own body felt cleaner than drowning in the mess she'd created. The first workout nearly killed me. I hadn't trained properly in years, but the burn in my muscles was honest, real, a pain I could respect because it led somewhere. I got new clothes. Nothing flashy, just fitted modern stuff that made me look like I actually cared about myself again. When I walked past the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back. He looked sharper, more defined, less wounded. Samantha noticed. Of course she did. "New shirt?" she asked the next time she came home, her eyes scanning me with a mix of surprise and suspicion. "Yeah," I said simply. "You're dressing up more." I shrugged. "Just living my life." Her brows pinched together. "Since when?" "Since now." The lack of detail drove her insane. She thrived on knowing everything, but suddenly she had nothing. I started spending time outside the house, dinner with coworkers, drinks with an old friend from high school, even just long walks alone with my headphones, anything that reminded me the world didn't revolve around her. One evening, I walked in around 10 p.m. Samantha was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, leg bouncing with irritation. "Where were you?" she asked, trying to sound casual and failing miserably. I hung my keys calmly. "Out." "With who?" "Does it matter?" Her jaw tightened. "I'm just asking." "You never used to ask," I said. "Thought we were giving each other space." She opened her mouth, then closed it, because she didn't want space anymore. Not if it meant I might actually take it. She smelled like Tyler's cologne again, and guilt flickered across her face when she realized I noticed. But for once I didn't react to it. I didn't flinch or ask questions. I just walked past her like she was a stranger. And that, more than anything, shattered her confidence. A week later, She walked into the bedroom while I was getting ready to go out again. This time my shirt was fitted, my hair styled, my whole energy different, more alive, more confident, almost like I'd stepped into a new version of myself. She lingered in the doorway, staring. "You're going out again?" "Yeah." "Where?" I looked at her reflection in the mirror. "Why do you want to know?" Her expression twisted, jealousy mixed with confusion. "I just think it's strange you're suddenly doing all this." "Doing what?" "Changing everything," she snapped. "Working out, buying new clothes, acting like you don't care." I turned, meeting her eyes directly. "Maybe I'm just finally choosing myself." She didn't know whether to be angry or scared, so instead she settled for a whisper. "Are you seeing someone?" The question hung there, trembling in the air between us. A question she had no right to ask, but asked anyway. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just gave her a slow smile, the kind that says you're not entitled to the truth anymore. And her breath hitched, because for the first time since she'd left for Tyler, she realized I wasn't sitting around waiting for her to come home and fix things. I wasn't broken. I wasn't begging. I was moving on. And she felt it, deep in her bones. The shift of power, the slipping of her control, the sudden insecurity that made her eyes darken with something dangerously close to panic. She'd wanted a break. She hadn't expected me to take one too. But now the gap between us was widening. Not because she created it, but because I finally stopped trying to close it. And she understood one thing all too clearly. If she didn't act fast, she might lose me long before she ever realized what she threw away. It didn't happen suddenly. Tyler didn't implode in a single dramatic moment. It was slower, messier, like watching a building sag before it finally collapses. The first real sign came one night when Samantha returned home looking drained, not glowing, not excited, not flushed with that secret fire she'd been carrying for weeks. Just tired, truly tired. She tossed her purse onto a chair and sank onto the couch, elbows on her knees, face in her hands. She didn't even notice me at first. When she finally did, she looked startled, like she'd forgotten I still existed in this house. "Rough night?" I asked, same calm tone as always. She exhaled shakily. "You have no idea." But this time her voice wasn't hiding excitement. It was hiding dread. I didn't say a word. I just waited. "Tyler's having a hard time," she said finally. "Hard time." A vague, sanitized phrase for a man whose life, apparently, was unraveling faster than she could patch it. She didn't elaborate, but her hands were trembling slightly. Not from concern, from frustration. Whatever fantasy she'd run toward, it wasn't matching reality anymore. Over the next few days, the glow she once carried faded completely. She came home more often, but each time she arrived, she looked worse. Tension etched across her forehead. Makeup smudged. Hair frizzed. Clothes wrinkled like she'd been clinging to chaos all day. I didn't pry. I just observed. One evening, she walked through the door with a look that was somewhere between anger and exhaustion. She dropped a grocery bag onto the counter so hard a box inside burst open. "Everything okay?" I asked. "No," she snapped, then immediately softened her voice, embarrassed. "I'm just overwhelmed." "With Tyler?" I asked gently. Her jaw flexed. "He's just complicated." Complicated. Interesting. That wasn't how she described him when she rekindled whatever they'd had. "Is he still in crisis?" I pressed, not out of concern but curiosity, like studying the slow unraveling of a storyline I already knew the ending to. She hesitated. "He's not working. Barely leaves the house. He argues with me over nothing. He gets jealous if I don't answer immediately. He's intense." Ah, there it was. She didn't run toward a romantic fantasy. She ran toward a fire she couldn't control. And now she was burning. A few nights later, around 1 a.m., she stormed into the house. I heard her drop her shoes in the hallway, muttering angrily under her breath. When she stepped into the light, her mascara was smudged. "Everything okay?" I asked again, same neutral tone. No, she said, voice shaking. He's losing it. I tried to help and he just yelled at me. He accused me of keeping things from him. Keeping things from him? That was rich. She brushed past me, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. I can't believe him, she muttered. He says I'm distant. He says I don't care. He says I still have feelings for you. She froze as soon as she said it. For me. Her husband. Her cheeks flushed, and she quickly turned away, pretending to grab a glass of water. But the truth hung in the air. Tyler felt her slipping. Because she was. She'd gone to him expecting excitement, passion, romance, and instead found a man drowning in his own insecurities. A man who wanted to possess her, not love her. A man who resented me because he already knew I had something he could never replace. Stability, self-control, dignity. Qualities that become intensely attractive when you're stuck in the emotional wreckage of someone else's chaos. The breaking point came a week later. I was in the living room reading when Samantha burst through the door again, eyes red, breathing heavy. What happened? I asked. She threw her hands up. He's impossible. He blew up over nothing. He said I wasn't paying enough attention to him. He said I didn't care about him the same way he cares about me. He thinks I'm... God, I don't even know. He thinks you're what? I asked softly. She swallowed hard. That I'm using him, or that I'm still in love with someone else. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. Silence stretched between us. Then she said something I didn't expect. He's not who I thought he was. Of course he wasn't. People never are when you use fantasy to paint over reality. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in a pillow. I just wanted to help him. He was supposed to get better. But now I feel trapped. I feel like I made a mistake. That was the closest she'd come to admitting the truth. I sat across from her, my voice steady, controlled. Samantha, I said quietly, you don't have to fix him. You can't fix him. Her eyes lifted slowly, full of something fragile, fear, confusion, maybe regret. And then she said the line that confirmed everything. He's falling apart, Jason, and now I feel like I'm falling apart with him. But here's the part she didn't expect. I wasn't falling with her. I was standing tall, steady, untouched, watching the consequences of her choices swallow her whole. And deep down, I think she finally realized she hadn't left me for a man. She'd left me for chaos. And chaos doesn't love you back. The funny thing about being abandoned is that it forces you to meet someone new, yourself. For weeks, I'd watched Samantha spiral in and out of the house like a woman living two lives and failing at both. Meanwhile, without planning it, I began building something she hadn't expected, a life that didn't revolve around her. And the shift didn't just change how I acted, it changed how people responded to me, especially one person. It started at the gym. I'd been showing up consistently, pushing myself harder each time, letting the stress bleed out through the barbell instead of through arguments. One evening, I was finishing a set when I heard a voice next to me. Careful, you're going to show the rest of us up. I turned and saw her. Emily. We'd spoken once or twice before, small talk in passing, but never like this. Her brown hair was tied back, loose strands framing her face. Sweat shimmered along her collarbone, and her smile was disarming, warm in a way that felt almost dangerous. I laughed. Trust me, I'm just trying not to fall over. She tilted her head, studying me. You've been coming in a lot lately. Something change? I should have lied, but something about her made honesty feel natural. Yeah, I said, trying to take better care of myself. Well, she said, nudging me lightly with her elbow, it suits you. Her touch lingered just a fraction longer than necessary, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something spark inside me, something I thought Samantha had taken when she walked out the door. We started talking more. Not flirting, at least not at first. Just two people sharing pieces of life in the spaces between workouts. One night, as we were leaving the gym at the same time, she said, "You look different lately, more confident." "Do I?" I asked. "Yeah." She gave a soft smile. "Like you finally remembered your worth." The words hit deeper than she knew. Samantha had spent months draining me. Emily made me feel seen in minutes. We walked out into the cool air together. She tugged her hoodie tighter and asked, "Heading home?" "Not yet," I said. "Thought I'd grab something to eat." She hesitated. "I could join you, if that's okay." It wasn't a date. It was two adults grabbing food. That's what I told myself. But the truth? My heart beat faster in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. We ended up at a small place a few blocks away, sitting across from each other in a dim booth. Conversation flowed easily. No forced smiles, no hidden agendas, no tension disguised as concern. She talked about her job as a physical therapist. I talked about work. She laughed at my dry jokes. I admired the way she listened, really listened, leaning forward with her chin on her hand. At one point, she looked at me for a long moment and said softly, "Whoever made you feel small, they were wrong." My chest tightened. She didn't know Samantha. She didn't know the mess I was living in. And yet she saw right through me. There was no sex in her words, but there was warmth, attraction, connection, something real, something I'd been starving for without realizing it. When we stepped outside after dinner, the night air was crisp. Emily hugged herself lightly and smiled at me. "This was nice," she said. "Yeah," I replied. It was. For a moment, we just stood there, close enough to feel the warmth of the other person, far enough that nothing inappropriate happened. But the tension, it was there. Soft, electric, alive. She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm glad I ran into you tonight." I swallowed. "Me too." She hesitated, then touched my arm gently. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm around." Her fingers lingered just long enough for my heart to catch it. Not a seduction, not an invitation to cheat. Just a moment of human closeness, the kind I hadn't felt in months. When I walked into the house later that night, Samantha was sitting at the dining table. She looked up immediately. "You're home late," she said, trying to sound casual but failing. "Yeah," I replied, hanging up my jacket. "Had dinner after the gym." "With who?" The question shot out before she could soften it. I didn't answer right away. I didn't lie, but I didn't rush to reassure her either. "Someone I met at the gym," I said finally. Her face changed, just slightly, but enough. A tiny flash of panic, a sting of jealousy, a shot of fear. For the first time, she understood. While she was drowning in Tyler's chaos, someone else was pulling me back to life, and it terrified her, because Samantha was losing me, and she knew it. Samantha didn't react right away when I mentioned dinner with someone from the gym. She just froze, like her brain hit a wall it didn't expect to find. Then she forced a casual smile, thin, brittle, the kind that cracks at the slightest pressure. "Oh," she said, "that's nice." But her eyes were anything but nice. They were sharp, wide, calculating. She was trying to sound indifferent, but her breathing gave her away. She inhaled too deeply, exhaled too slowly, the same way she did when she was trying not to show fear. And in that moment, the shift between us became unmistakable. She wasn't worried about losing Tyler. She was worried about losing me. The panic didn't show fully until the next morning. I was making coffee when Samantha walked into the kitchen wearing one of her softer smiles, the smile she used back when she wanted something from me. She leaned against the counter, arms crossing under her chest, voice gentle. "So, who'd you have dinner with?" I hid my amusement behind my mug. "Someone from the gym." "Right," she said quickly. "But who exactly?" Her tone was too light, too curious. But jealousy sat beneath every syllable like a vibrating wire. I shrugged. Just someone I've talked to a few times. Her jaw clenched before she managed another smile. A girl? I met her eyes. Does it matter? She blinked, stunned by the calmness of my response. It matters, she said softly. If she matters. That was the moment her mask slipped. And I saw it. The fear. The realization. The truth she'd been avoiding since the moment she left with her neatly packed bag. She thought she'd always have a safety net. She thought I'd always stay right where she left me. Waiting. Hurting. Loyal. But now, she could feel me slipping through her fingers. She pushed her hair behind her ear, pretending to adjust it. A nervous habit. I just want to know what's happening in your life, Jason. I raised an eyebrow. Since when? Her lips parted, but no answer came. Because we both knew the truth. She only cared now because someone else might. The real panic arrived later that week. She came home earlier than usual. No makeup, eyes puffy, breathing uneven. She dropped her keys twice, trying to put them on the hook. When I walked into the hallway, she looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen in months. Raw desperation. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Sure." She followed me into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, fingers twisting around each other like she needed something to hold on to. "It's Tyler," she finally said, voice cracking. "He's getting worse." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but it wasn't grief I saw. It was exhaustion and regret. "He keeps accusing me of things. He says I'm pulling away. He says I don't care. He even said I'm probably falling for someone else." She swallowed hard. "He mentioned you." I didn't react. She wiped her eyes. "He thinks you and I still have feelings." Still have. The phrasing didn't escape me. "And do you?" I asked. Her breath hitched. She looked down at her shaking hands, then up at me. "Yes," she whispered. "Of course I do." But the confession didn't feel tender or romantic. It felt panicked, reactive, triggered by the fear of losing something she thought she owned. "He's not stable," she continued. "He's jealous, controlling, emotional. Everything I do, he twists into something else. I'm tired, Jason. I'm so tired." I nodded. "I understand." "No, you don't," she said, voice trembling. "I thought I could help him. But he's draining me. He's pulling me under with him. And you—" She stopped, biting her lip, shaking her head. "You look happier than you've looked in years." I stayed silent. "He's falling apart," she said again, this time barely audible. "And I feel like I'm falling with him." She lifted her eyes to mine, wide, filled with fear, and something dangerously close to longing. Then she said it. "I don't want to lose you." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. But I didn't run to her. I didn't console her. I didn't reach out to touch her shoulder or her hand the way I once would have. Instead, I asked quietly, "What changed?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You didn't care when you walked out that door. You didn't care when you spent every night with him. You didn't care when you hid your phone or lied about where you were. So why now?" Her mouth opened, then closed, because she knew the answer. And so did I. She cared now because someone else might want me. She cared now because she could feel me slipping. She cared now because in losing me, she'd lose the one thing Tyler could never give her: security. She leaned toward me, voice soft, almost pleading. "Jason, can we fix this?" But the wildest part? She didn't understand that the man she abandoned wasn't the same man sitting in front of her anymore. I wasn't broken. I wasn't waiting. And I wasn't hers to reclaim. Not anymore. There's a moment when you realize the person who once held all the power over you suddenly doesn't anymore. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't come with dramatic speeches. It comes quietly, like a tide finally changing direction. For me, That moment arrived the morning Samantha woke up early and actually cooked breakfast. She hadn't cooked in months. I walked into the kitchen and found her standing there in one of her old oversized t-shirts, hair messy, eyes tired. Pancakes were stacked on a plate. Bacon sizzled in the pan. She looked up at me with a small, hopeful smile, the kind she used to give me when we first started dating. "Morning," she said softly. I nodded. "Morning. I made breakfast. I can see that." She hesitated, then added, "For you." It was such an obvious attempt to reconnect that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I sat down, mostly because I didn't have the energy to argue. She placed a plate in front of me and then sat across the table, watching me with a nervousness she didn't try to hide. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Fine." "Just fine?" "Yeah," I replied calmly. "Fine." She swallowed. "I miss how we used to talk." I looked at her for a moment. She wasn't wrong. We used to talk easily, freely, like partners. But that was before the lies, before Tyler, before the secrecy. She'd spent months building walls, and now she wanted me to pretend they weren't there. She took a breath. "Jason, can we fix this?" I set down my fork. "What exactly do you want to fix?" She blinked, as if surprised I didn't automatically accept the invitation. "Us," she whispered. "I want us back." "Why?" Her eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean, why?" "I mean exactly that," I said. "Why now? What changed?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked down at her hands. "I just realized what I had, what I still have, and I don't want to lose it." Her voice cracked at the end, but it didn't shake me, not like it used to, because now I could see straight through it. She didn't want me back. She wanted the security I represented. She wanted the comfort, the stability, the ease of knowing I'd always be there. She wasn't asking for us. She was asking for her safety net. I leaned back. "You didn't think about losing me when you walked out the door." Her face tightened. I know. I messed up." "You didn't think about losing me when you stayed with him every night." I wasn't thinking clearly. "You didn't think about losing me when you lied, or when you hid your phone, or when you stopped coming home." Her eyes filled with tears. I was confused. I was trying to help someone who needed me. "And now?" I asked. "What do you need?" She inhaled shakily. "You." The word used to mean everything to me. Now it felt hollow. "Why?" I repeated. She finally broke. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "Because you're calm, and steady, and good. I feel safe with you. I always have." Safe. There it was. The real truth. Not passion, not love, not desire. Safety. A safe harbor she walked away from, and panicked when she realized the storm she chose was drowning her. I stood up slowly and pushed my chair back. "Samantha," I said, "I'm not your backup plan." Her breath caught. "I'm not—" "You chose your ex," I said gently but firmly. "And that's okay. You made your decision. But now I'm making mine." She stared at me in disbelief, tears streaking down her face. "Jason, please, please don't do this. I made a mistake. I know I did. But I can fix it. I want to fix it. I want us again." Her voice trembled, and for a moment I saw the woman she used to be. But wanting to go backward doesn't undo the damage. "I'm not angry," I said quietly. "I'm not even hurt anymore." That was the line that broke her, because she knew what it meant. When someone stops being hurt, they've already started moving on. She stood abruptly, reaching for my hand. "Jason, please. I love you." I gently pulled my hand away. "No," I said softly. "You loved the version of me who waited, who absorbed every mistake, who kept the peace. That man's gone." She shook her head, eyes desperate. "I can change. I'll do whatever you want. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut him off. I'll—" "It's not about him," I interrupted. It's about me. The strength in my voice surprised even me. I'm choosing myself now. For a long moment, she just stared, silent, stunned, terrified. That was when she truly understood. The power she once held over me? Gone. The security she expected to come back to? Gone. The marriage she thought she could reclaim with tears and promises? Gone. Samantha sank back into her chair, shoulders trembling as the truth washed over her. I wasn't hers anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. She'd chosen her path. Now I was choosing mine. And there was no turning back. The day everything finally ended wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no accusations, no thrown dishes. Sometimes a storm ends with thunder, and sometimes it ends with quiet, steady rain. For Samantha, it ended with a knock on the door. I was in the living room sorting through work emails when she opened it. I heard her inhale sharply, then a strained whisper, "Tyler, what are you doing here?" His voice came through loud enough for me to hear the edge in it, desperation mixed with something sour. "We need to talk," he demanded. "No," she said quickly, panic rising. "Not here. You shouldn't have come." He ignored her and stepped inside. His eyes were wild, tired, completely unhinged from the version she thought she'd run toward. When his gaze landed on me sitting calmly on the couch, something in him snapped. "So this is why you're acting different," he spat. "You ran back to him." Samantha's breathing turned frantic. "Tyler, stop. Please. You need to go." But he didn't move. Not toward her. Not toward me. Just stood there, shaking. "You said you cared about me," he whispered. "You said you wouldn't leave like everyone else." Her shoulders slumped under the weight of her own decisions. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." Those words hit him harder than anything I could have said. He let out a bitter laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "You used me," he said. "You just wanted excitement, attention. You never cared." His voice cracked at the end. Then, just like that, he turned around and walked out the door. No goodbye. No final word. Just the sound of his shoes disappearing down the steps. And Samantha didn't run after him. She didn't call his name. She just stood there trembling, staring at the open doorway as if the world she had built, so recklessly, so blindly, had finally collapsed into dust. It had. For a long moment, she didn't move. When she finally turned toward me, her face was pale, drained, almost hollow. "It's over," she whispered. I nodded. "I know." She walked slowly to the couch and sat across from me, folding her legs beneath her like she used to when she wanted comfort. But this time, she found none. "Jason, I don't know who I am anymore," she said. "I don't know why I did any of this. I ruined everything." I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit between us, heavy but honest. She looked at me with eyes full of quiet pleading. "Can we rebuild?" Her voice was small, a fragile hope, but my heart didn't move, not the way it once would have. "Samantha," I said gently, "I don't think we can." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Why?" "I'm willing to do anything. Therapy, boundaries, whatever it takes. I'll cut everyone off if you want. I'll—" "This isn't about them," I interrupted softly. "It's about us. What we became. What you chose. And who I've become through all of this." She wiped her cheeks with shaking hands. "But I love you." I nodded. "I believe you. But love isn't always enough. Not when trust is gone." She flinched like the words physically hit her. "I'm not angry anymore," I continued. "I'm not hurt. I'm not waiting for you to fix anything. I'm done trying to glue something back together that wasn't meant to survive." Her lip trembled. "So that's it? After everything? After all the years together?" I held her gaze. "Sometimes the person you thought you'd spend your life with becomes the person you needed to grow beyond." A sob escaped her. She pressed her palm over her mouth, trying to stifle it. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it gently. The cool air flowed in, brushing against my face like a promise of something new. "When you're ready," I said quietly, "you can start packing your things. I'll help you find a place if you need." She stared up at me with eyes full of heartbreak and regret. "Jason," she whispered, voice cracking, "please don't walk away." I stepped aside, giving her a clear view of the doorway. "I don't walk away from people who love me," I said softly, "but I do walk away from people who break me." She broke again, letting out a quiet, devastated cry. And that's when I said the words that closed the chapter for good. "I don't do breaks. Not from someone who broke me first." She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. But I didn't go to her, not out of cruelty, but because some moments require the silence of consequence. I stepped outside. The air felt cleaner, lighter, like a life I hadn't lived yet was finally beginning to unfold. Behind me, Samantha's sobs faded into the background as the door slowly swung closed, and I walked forward, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. She watched me leave a life she could no longer be part of, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free.